Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is our spoiler review of Dune Part 2. I'm here with RB3. We just saw Dune 2. We actually saw it. I think we both saw it twice in theaters. So we're coming off our two-time watch of this Part 2 movie. We're here to break it down spoiler-wise. RB3, I want to start off, obviously, with your thoughts on the movie, overall thoughts, because we're just getting to talk about it right now. We've seen a little bit of our thoughts on social media, but your general consensus as far as Dune Chapter 2 or Part 2.
Dune Chapter 2, I liked it a lot. I liked it a whole lot. It was phenomenal. It was a great piece of cinematic storytelling. It was a great piece of blockbuster storytelling. And I had a great time watching it both times that I watched it. You know, I definitely came in with high expectations, not to the fault of anybody but my own. I always try to tell myself, like, don't read Twitter, don't look at like Rotten Tomato stuff before I go into stuff, because when I see like something like high 90s on Rotten Tomatoes and people saying it's the blockbuster movie like of the summer, you know, my expectations immediately go to like Mad Max Fury Road, immediately goes to like movies that are like top tier and like my all-time favorites. And when it wasn't that, the first time I watched it, I was a little bit like, it was really good. I just didn't love it on that level. The second time I watched it, I had a much fonder appreciation for it, especially for, like I mentioned before, the craftsmanship with Denis Villeneuve, what cinematographer Greg Fraser was putting together, what production designer meant to get their name off, write their name down too. But everything on the technical level was phenomenal. And yeah, I also watched the interview with Denis Villeneuve talking about the movies that inspired him to make this film. It's a great interview. I recommend everybody check it out. But when he starts talking about how films like Lawrence of Arabia, you know, Ingmar Bergman's Persona, and Akira, you know, weirdly enough, like all were kind of influences on this movie, you kind of start seeing deeper, like, oh, wow, this is taking from a lot of very different sources, but telling a very coherent story overall. So I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
He said Temptation of Christ as well, Scorsese Christ movie. But yeah, I saw that interview as well. I really enjoyed it as well. It's hard for me to try to encapsulate exactly what I'm feeling. I'm trying to grab it. It's so difficult to try to explain the different types of emotions that I'm feeling when it comes to this movie, because I fell in love with the first one. Like, this was introducing the story of Dune to me. I'm not familiar with it at all. So the first movie was me just consuming everything all at once when it comes to the world building, with the different houses, with the Spice Planet, with the Harkonnen, all this kind of stuff that was brand new to me. To a lot of people, it isn't brand new, but for me, it was. So after the first one, I was elated. I was just so hyped, as far as just fascinated by the world and wanting to read the book, but at the same time waiting to see the movie first before I read the book, because that's usually how I do things. But I loved it. I really did. I really did feel like it was a cinematic journey that was a lot, and it was definitely a lot to take in. And it felt satisfying to see the story. I definitely still wanted more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It leaves off at a point very much where you're just kind of still waiting for those extra 15 minutes. But they don't come. It just kind of ends. And that's probably one frustration of mine that I have. But again, that's me just wanting more, and that's wanting more of the story. But apparently that's also where the book ends, at least the first book. So I'm definitely hoping for more, but at the same time, I really did feel like I was involved in an amazing journey that I partook in when it comes to this movie, when it comes to exploring the Fremen culture, the rise of Lisan al-Gaib, to going to Gedi Prime and learning about the Harkonnen and how they do things and how they're insane, to the Emperor scenes, and then obviously the finale at the end, which was a lot of fun. So it was an absolute journey experience. Talk to me about that kind of cinematic experience that you had, RB3.
Well, I mean, I totally love and appreciate the experience that I had, because I was fortunate enough to see it in IMAX 70 millimeter both times that I saw it. First time was at the AMC Universal City Walk. Second time was at the TCL Chinese Theater. Massive screen, man. And it's just like when you see the full, when it goes full frame, when it goes to the full 1.43 to 1 aspect ratio, and you're getting that, it's just like a different level. It's a different level of cinema. And not gonna lie, you know, both times like I was like in row E and row D, so like a little bit closer. But honestly, with IMAX being that close isn't that bad. It actually kind of like makes it more of like a magnitude, like more of the scale you're like soaking in, especially on the close-ups. I love the way that Denis Villeneuve handled close-ups. Same thing I said with Oppenheimer too. The way Nolan does close-ups in the IMAX 70 millimeter is phenomenal. But also just the wide shots, the scale, the action set pieces itself, like just the I always laugh in the beginning when we see those the opening for one. I love the not the opening shot, but the opening shot of Timothée Chalamet like laying on the red on the sand and listening to the heartbeat, and then we're kind of seeing like the events play out. I thought it was just like a gorgeous like piece. It really brought me back to like Sicario in terms of like Villeneuve storytelling. And then we see those guys like launch up from the rock and just start floating, and the music from like Hans Zimmer just goes and it's like, and I'm like, oh, this is hard. So it's a very transfixing movie experience. Like Denis Villeneuve knows how to set a vibe. Like he sets a vibe so well, makes it super weird, super trippy, super sci-fi. Even the parts when it's like the fetus, like the close-up of the fetus, which is Allah, which is going to be, or Aliyah, I believe, going to be eventually played by Anya Taylor-Joy. That was, even that stuff was like trippy and weird, but also like not too weird to like not understand. You know what I mean? So it was dope. And it's funny because one of my favorite documentaries of all time is Jodorowsky's Dune, right? Like the movie that explores what Dune was going to look like from Alejandro Jodorowsky. And the visuals in this felt much more akin to like what that Lost film could have been. Like just a super surrealist kind of leaning into that. I mean, we're going to talk about all the stuff with the Harkins too, and the Bene Gesserit, particularly the scene when Leah Sedal is like seducing Austin Butler in that one sequence, and then like the lights start going super trippy. It's just all these different moments and scenes that aren't afraid to lean into the weirdness of it, and I appreciate that for sure.
And how was your crowd, your theater?
Oh man, it was all film nerds. I mean, both crowds were complete film nerds. I mean, the AMC crowd literally started clapping when the Nicole Kidman commercial started coming on. So I'm like, all right, I'm locked in. And then people really loved. I mean, people were into it. I mean, both times they started clapping at the end of it. And the second time I gave it a little clap too. I got what I needed to get out of it. But people, is very interesting to see what people react to. I think the biggest reaction from me and because the second time I watched it with my girlfriend, was when Dave Bautista just smashed his homeboy's head in at the very beginning. It's like, rest, what do you think I need rest? And like just smashes his head in. I'm like, yo. And like the whole crowd, you just, I'll be like, like it just really puts you into like, all right, there's like chaotic good, and then chaotic evil, and then just super evil. Like, and that's what like the Harkins kind of represent. So it was fun.
Yeah, the Harkonnen are like every time they're on screen, sir, you should go left. Head comes off like every 5 seconds. They're like, sir, I lost him. Neck snap. I'm just like, bro, this is nuts. These guys are crazy. I swear, I can't even lie. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, and I'm a very orderly person. But the Harkonnen are what kind of stood out a lot in this movie. I can't lie. That scene in Gedi Prime just left me blown away. But also, I'm talking about the black and white Gedi Prime is a planet. But also the thought process, the framing of what the Harkonnen are is very interesting to me. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I want to talk about the story as a cohesive part 1 and part 2. So this is a part 2. It's not a I said chapter 2 earlier. That's my mistake. It's a part 1. It's a part 2 follow up to the part 1, meaning that it starts off exactly where we left off in the first movie. How does that work for you, RB3, as a 2-parter of a movie?
I liked it. It actually works as both a 2-parter, but also as his own film as well. Because my girlfriend hadn't seen the first Dune at all. Like I kind of gave her a little bit of a summary in the car, just kind of like the main bullet points. But she went into Dune 2 and like actually understood it pretty thoroughly. And they do a pretty good job of like recapping a lot of the events in this movie too. So I think it works really good on that level. And I also think it's obviously setting up for a Dune Part 3. Like you mentioned, I think that was the one thing that frustrated me too a little bit, was how it did leave me wanting more at the end. And it's funny, I actually went back and watched our old review of the first Dune, and I said the exact same thing. Like, I was like, yo, I loved it, but it just ends so soon. I could have did another 15, 20. And it was the same thing with this movie. Like, I could have done another 15, 20 with it. Of course, like, that's what they say, the hallmarks of making a good movie is leave you wanting more. But I wanted just a little bit more than this. I expected it to be like, and it did end on a nice action-packed finale. But, you know, to me, like, again, comparing it to other like major blockbusters, Avatar: The Way of Water had like a hour-long something, you know, action set piece at the end, and feels like a fully wrapped up like kind of ending before it sets up something else. So again, I'm not mad at it. It's just like, it just left it in such an incomplete place. But when you're talking about jumping in from part 1 to part 2, I actually think it was nice to continue that journey and learn that they're moving Yamas's body across the desert. That was what the whole journey was for. I like learning that. I like learning the process of what they do with people after they're dead, how they drain the liquid out of their body, and if, you know, they're Iraqis or Iraqians, I don't know. Furman, exactly. If they're Furman, they get their water put into this beautiful like pond of souls, stuff like that. So I thought all that stuff was nice continuation from what the story was leading to from part 1 to part 2. It all flowed really well. But yeah, I wanted more from the ending. But yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the themes now. Obviously, this is what the internet is talking about right now when it comes to trying to digest the themes of the movie, to do it coinciding with the book and what the book was trying to do as well, and trying to read into what Frank Herbert was trying to communicate throughout his story. But I think it's pretty clear. I don't know about you, RB3, but I think since the first one, it's been kind of clear. But the second one kind of dives deeper into other themes, such as religious figures, white savior, a lot of those kind of thought process, but also still talking about the colonial superpowers and imposing your will and taking natural resources from a planet that isn't yours or from a place that isn't yours while stepping on the native people. But just talk to me about more what you got from the theme and the message of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I really dug the theme. I mean, the theme is all over it. You know, what are the consequences of a false messiah? You know what I mean? Like, what's the false prophet? What does that lead to? How that can corrupt a person? How that can kind of turn a person who I mean, I kind of thought Paul Atreides was good from the beginning, but, you know, he kind of loses his sense of himself, loses a sense of his relationship with the people around him, with Chani, with all these people. This is spoiler territory that we're talking now. And it was heartbreaking. But it is something that, you know, when you do get too power hungry, too lust, you know, fulfilled, you know, too, not less fulfilled, but like, lust is the completely wrong word, but like to get to, you know, too power hungry and just want to get to the top and want to, you know, do things the way you want to do it, it could lead you down dark paths. And I think that's what this film kind of brilliantly portrays in an introspective kind of way too. You know, again, that's talking about the influence from Lawrence of Arabia. You know, Lawrence of Arabia is about a guy who became a part of a community and ends up backstabbing him, you know, towards the end. This is kind of what happens here. I will say, you know, I'm not trying to hate on Dune 2. Not saying anything as a negative to Dune 2 when I say this, but I also saw a little movie this year called Book of Clarence, right? Like, and I keep bringing this up. I brought this up on Twitter multiple times, but like, Book of Clarence is a movie that I really love. Beautiful, religious comedy akin to like Life of Brian, you know, them Monty Python movies. But it also dealt with like this false messiah thing. And I just saw that a couple months ago. So I feel like me seeing Book of Clarence might have like kind of already warned me a little bit. Like, not warned me, but I already had a movie this year that had me thinking pretty deeply, like, what this kind of look like? And then Dune 2 comes out, and I guess it just didn't hit as impactfully for me. But I say that to say, another Legendary Pictures movie Book of Clarence. Nobody watched it. Bombed at the box office. Lakeith Stanfield's amazing. And I want whoever's watching this Dune 2 review to at least rent Book of Clarence and check it out and see kind of like the funny side of this kind of story. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I took from it. The religious thing was definitely at the forefront, and that was like what they really were trying to hone in for, especially with the imagery.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because I've seen a lot of people talk about the uplifting of this outside influence saving this group of people, aka white savior, right? That's exactly what that is. But I really do see this movie, and I think most people are seeing it as a deconstruction of that, as a criticism of that, not necessarily as an elevation of it, which a lot of people are just kind of assuming watching the trailer, because I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it and are just kind of judging based off that, and are just being like, "Hey, don't watch Dune. It's a white savior movie." Maybe you should watch it and just try to get what they're trying to communicate out of that movie. Again, I feel like this is another thing that's coming into this is a conversation that's been all over TikTok, man, and Twitter. It's just coming into reading certain stories in certain ways. Just because there's tropes inside that movie doesn't mean that movie is endorsing those tropes. Same thing with Lady Jessica. You'll see her throughout the movie as well, kind of doing the same thing as Paul when it comes to embracing her power, right? When we see her at first being like, nah, nah, I don't want it, and then being like, where's my chair?
All right,
Like,
I'm the Reverend Mother now.
yeah,
And,
like, like, you got to carry me.
mhm,
They're carrying her everywhere. I was just like, yo, this is crazy. But that kind of ideology, as far as it's criticizing what we've seen in media in the past, because it came before it all. That's what's so fascinating, RB3, that this is 1965. I'm just like blown away how much
yeah.
this inspired. This inspired a lot of what I know and what I read. Obviously, Star Wars is the biggest one, but
Mm,
also, I mean, Attack on Titan. It's so similar to Attack on Titan. It's not even funny.
mm,
There's a ton of movies this is similar to, and how they're playing off certain themes that has been around for a while because Frank Herbert was kind of dealing with those themes back in his era as well.
mm,
So again, I don't want to ignore the biggest one, or at least the biggest one that I see throughout both movies, and that is colonialism and
mm,
how taking the resources of another planet while stepping on the people that live there, or stepping on the people that inherit that land, have been a part of that land, and treating them like subhuman or not human. The Harkonnen called them rats throughout the entire movie.
mm,
So throughout the whole movie, whether you're, you know, coming from a different background or not, you're probably rooting for the Fremen. The Fremen are the people that you want to succeed. You want them to have their planet back. You want them to have their paradise if there is one, or just to have peace in general, which is what Chani wants.
mhm.
Um, so I feel like that's the biggest theme. But you're right, the rise of a power and kind of buying into your own hype and buying into your own power is a huge theme throughout the movie.
Yeah, and I think your theme of colonialism and what I was mentioning about religion are so intertwined because
Yeah.
1965, this was right at the peak of like the beginnings of the Israel and Palestine debate when it was like happening in the 60s, right? So much so that they literally had borders like the 1967 borders, like they were at conflict so much during the 60s, like they drew a whole set of borders that they're still arguing about if they should follow, to this day. So that's to say, like, this, I mean, for all, forsaken purposes, this does feel like a very analogous to what's happening in today's society now, right? I think particularly in the scene when Dave Bautista and the Harkonnens are carpet bombing the spot, where all the Fernan are hiding out in their sacred temples and stuff in the north. They just bomb it all to smithereens. All of the water from the lost souls getting destroyed, tunnels getting collapsed in, multiple people dead. They're just burning up the birds. Again, that feels very similar to me as the imagery that I'm seeing coming out of, Gaza and stuff like that. So it definitely tells that story, and a lot, and that story of Israel versus Palestine, of the religious conflicts that are embedded in there, all really do come from religion, all really do come from the idea of one group of people believes they haven't had their Messiah come yet and they're waiting for their Messiah, and the other people believe that the Messiah already comes. And in the case of Dune, the Furman, at least in the North, like Chinese people, they just are forgetting all this stuff. And it's very interesting how the Bene Gesserit are almost kind of like the Catholics in a certain kind of way, right? Like how a lot of times, like, you know, religion, especially in the early medieval times and stuff like that, was largely written by the church, executed by the church, but exercised in order to impoverish, not necessarily impoverish, but to oppress certain people, especially the poorest people. And that's what Jessica kind of almost alludes to, like at one part when she's like talking to the fetus, like we have to target the people who are the most vulnerable, the most poor, and turn them into believers. And it's just it dives deep into how colonialism and religious implications and missionaries and all that stuff are intertwined and really the roots of a certain number of problems that we have in the world. Not to say that religion is a bad thing and whatnot, but this is, like you mentioned, a deconstruction of the traditional Christ myths or the traditional chosen one myths that we've heard throughout cinematic and just storytelling history.
I feel like, there's no denying it. The fact that regardless of one's feelings, I feel like Frank Herbert definitely was not a very big fan of religion. It's definitely a huge question mark as far as like really questioning what is the purpose of having this kind of faith that has been constructed and that has been deliberately picked apart and chosen and kind of like pick and choose to create their own thesis and their own way of thinking, right? The Bene Gesserit has been implanting this kind of religion across all planets in order for them to have this backing so that they can have power no matter what, because they always have their religious background to back them up. And it really shows how, just like in the real world, religion can be used to justify anything. And that's what we saw, even if you want to talk about American history, RB3, Manifest Destiny. The idea that I was just watching this video last night about the history of the US and how we have genocide on our hands when it comes to the native people of this land, and how Manifest Destiny basically said, if you see a native person, shoot him, kill them, and take their land. Like that's what it was. God gave me this land. I have to get rid of all these animals and kill them all. And that's what we come from. That's, the history of the country. And I feel like that's exactly what this movie is showing you, that the dangers of the belief that if religion is on my side, if this faith is on my side, then I can justify anything. And it's the same, you could say the same thing about the Harkonnen. The Harkonnen, their religion is money.
Yeah.
Capitalism. They're like, as long as I got money and as long as I'm making money, I can do anything. I can do war crime after war crime after war crime. As long as the emperor is making me money and I'm making money for him, he's going to give me as much power as possible. The fact that the emperor had to choose between the Atreides and the Harkonnen, and he chose Harkonnen 10 times out of 10 because they were the capitalistic, corporate, industrial people. And the Atreides were more like the political, let's talk it out, kind of bureaucratic leaders, versus the Harkonnen, who were just like, I don't care, I'll kill everything in the planet just to make the most amount of money. If I can sell it, I'll do it. And that's kind of their thought process. It's still a type of religion, but it's a different kind of religion. So really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
And you can see how like bleak and cold, the Harkonnen perspective is. Like you mentioned, when we see their planet, the black and white photography that was shot with the infrared cameras, which I think is just a brilliant decision because it does produce such a different look than just shooting it traditionally black and white. Makes the skin super white, the blacks like super distinct. And when they had the ink blot explosions were just crazy too. Yeah, I think even Villeneuve said it kind of makes their skin look very like stone-like, very kind of rock-ish, like they're not really human, they're just really more of just forces of nature. And you see that through the cinematography, but you also see that through Austin Butler's performance as well during that sequence. Just him he just chews up every single scene that he's in, and which is hilarious. And he's not in the movie much. And I think there's some people who are saying, one of the greatest villains of all time. I don't know if I necessarily will say that. But I'll say he's definitely one of the biggest scene stealers of all time. Like literally every time he's on screen, he's gonna try to eat away as much attention as possible, which I love. But also going back to the religion thing, you're mentioning how Americans had Native Americans, how colonials had did manifest destiny with the Native Americans. It's also same thing they used to justify slavery. It was with religion as well. And I think Denis Villeneuve is such a brilliant director because we've obviously seen movies like Prisoners and like Enemy that really deal with those religious subplots and connotations and the ideas of beliefs and how can different interpretations come from that. So I think, just seeing the contrast between the Harkonnens versus the Atreides versus the Furman, versus somebody like Stilgar, who's like a full fundamentalist, almost to the point of comedy. So he paints these various shades very, very well throughout the movie.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and I really love to see all those different types of things. Also, the corruption of power was a big one as well. Obviously, you talked about that at the beginning a little bit more. Let's talk about Paul, man. Paul Atreides. The movie starts out with him wanting to be a part of the Fremen people. He wants to be a freedom fighter. He wants to push back against the Harkonnen, do some sabotage missions with the Fremen, and just kind of vibe and live with the Fremen as long as he can at the beginning.
Want to just walk with him?
Yeah, you saw my. I finally tweeted out my tweet. Say what? I don't even understand. I still think that's funny. Anyways, he just wants to be a part of the Fremen people. He wants to be a Fremen freedom fighter, which is a Fedaykin, is I think what they call it. And he becomes Muad'Dib. Muad'Dib, who is known for being a Fremen warrior who is pushing the Harkonnens out of the planet. That is what he's known for. And they don't know it's Paul. And then eventually, after he drinks the water of life, he becomes Lisan al-Gaib. I don't want to say he becomes Lisan al-Gaib. He pretends to be Lisan al-Gaib. He kind of embraces the role, I guess, of Lisan al-Gaib. And he becomes his own person as this kind of all-seeing prophet of the Fremen people. What'd you think of Paul's crazy journey in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a journey. It was a full journey. It's very interesting because I think that's maybe one of the other things that maybe is a little bit holds me back for this movie. I think it just happens so
quick.
Yeah, so fast. I mean, it goes through a lot. He goes through a lot of character journey just in this one thing. And I honestly get it because he went through so much in the first movie. Like, you don't want to jam too much into the first movie and then kind of get lost here. But it did feel like, this is going in mad different directions, mad fast. Like, I'm barely seeing him, kind of ingratiating himself with the culture. Like, again, I was laughing at the Sandwalk thing, but I did think it was nice and romantic when they're doing it's like a little dance, you know what I mean? They just be stepping, step to the left, step to, it's just nice, you know what I mean? But then, and then it just goes dark. But then, I think about too, like that's also what, the new Hunger Games movie, the Songbirds and Snakes, like it does also have that kind of like fast switch of like seeing the character you love turn into a character you hate. Also, of course, Anakin Skywalker and the Star Wars prequels as well.
That's legendary, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's and it's a classic tale. But this movie basically did what the last two Star Wars movies did in like one film, essentially. So it makes it a little bit like it just happens so quick. And I think that's one thing is like it just got a little not a little lost in sauce because I think it is a very clear cut point before he drinks the water of life. He's kind of more of the part that we come to love, the person we sympathize with, and he drinks that water of life, and then like he starts switching up, and he's like, "There's only one path," and he just proposes to Florence Pugh like randomly. Like that was the thing that I was just like, "Yo, what?" Like, and I get it that's like part of the deal, and they kind of alluded to it. But I still just think like I needed a little more establishment of that. I needed something that kind of I don't know. But anyway, Like I think it just got a little it was a little bit more convoluted than I would have liked that storyline to be. But
I felt the same way, but I felt like the movie was telling you that they felt the same way, if that
mm,
makes sense, where there's a scene when he comes into the cave and he's walking in like a boss, and his
yeah,
mom even says it, like, yo, slow down.
yeah,
Like there's that little line. I really do feel
mm,
like that line is big because the whole movie, Lady Jessica or Reverend Mother Jessica, is just spitting like prophecy game. Like she's like, yo, this guy's the one. He can ride the biggest sandworm. My son is Jesus. Like
mm,
she's spitting the whole movie. And even she was like, yo, chill, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like,
mm,
don't don't go too hard. Like
right,
you're clearly overdoing it. And then you see him talk to Gurney throughout those scenes, and it's so funny how he switches up, how he's all like, "We're gonna kill them all," and then he's like, "Hey, Gurney, by the way, can you ready those bombs for me, man? Thank you so much, bro." Like he's so chill. Like I'm like, wait a minute, he really is playing a character. Like he's
mm,
playing, like he doesn't play with Gurney because Gurney doesn't buy that, but
right,
he plays, Gurney, right? Josh
yeah,
Brolin's
Josh
character,
Brolin, yeah,
but he plays it in front of the Fremen where he's screaming the whole time he talks to them, but
mm,
he doesn't do that with Gurney and his mom. He talks to them like they're normal because they know he's playing a part, he's playing a role. And I felt like he in that moment was thinking like I have to play this character right away. Um, Otherwise, we're going to lose more people, like Tabra, which we
mm,
lose in the very beginning, which is the one you talked about, the cave that they destroyed in the beginning. So I agree with you, but again, they kind of try to explain it in the movie as well. But do you feel like the conclusion, as far as where we started Paul off to where we end Paul off, feels like a correct journey throughout the movie that you feel like audiences can read exactly what's going on with him?
uh, yeah. I mean, I think you can pick up that. I think you pick up the general sense that he has lost it. You know that he just kind of is. He's kind of lost his way and
He's he's
is not
high
gonna
on his
get.
own
He's
on
on
his
his own
own water of
supply,
life, on his own
right?
supply of water of life,
Right, and then he's just yeah. I mean,
sipping
it's
on that.
right. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio on The Wolf of Wall Street. Like you know he's beyond good. Now you're just kind of rooting for him because like you've been rooting for him so far. But it's heartbreaking, and I think that's what is commendable about this movie. Like most blockbusters would make you love the main protagonist and have you stay in love with the protagonist to the very end. But this movie didn't really do that. It kind of made you kind of question the head scratch. Like, man, is it really cool to like this guy? Is it cool to like any? Superhero white savior kind of thing. And that's also the thing too. I never really saw this movie as a white savior kind of situation personally. If you do see it as a white savior movie, you're really misreading it because it's showing you it's more of like a white
Anti-white
oppressor.
savior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it's like yeah, he's like not saving these people. He's actually gonna lead to the deaths of millions. Like he tells you millions. He tells you bajillion times in this film. Like yo, if I go to the South, there's gonna be
Billions of
millions.
people will die.
Yeah,
Billions. Yeah.
billions. I'm like, yo, like, why, why you even root for this guy? So I like that it's a blockbuster that isn't comfortable, that doesn't like cop out for the sake of its like main characters. Like, it is very much like still dealing with the consequences and the fallout of what like this kind of false messiah prophet is gonna be. But yeah. I do. Timothy Chalamet, good actor though. I can't not say that he's not a
That
great
was a good
performer.
moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did a really good job in this movie. In my opinion, a lot more. He had a lot more to do in this movie than the first one, and he nails it, especially when he becomes that character. I can't lie. At first, it took me a minute to buy it. I can't even lie.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a natural inclination with someone like a Timothy Chalamet,
Mm-hmm.
um, to try and buy his persona as being this kind of powerful figure, as Muad'Dib and as Lisan Gaib. But eventually you do buy it. When he says long live the fighters and they go nuts, I'm just like, all right, bro.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're that dude right now. I can't
Mm-hmm.
lie. So I definitely bought into that for sure. I want to get into real quick. I want to get to Gate Prime because I'm just obsessed with the black and white photography. I'm obsessed with feyd-rautha. Austin Butler. This is my first time seeing Austin Butler. I refuse to see that Elvis movie. Um, so this is my first time watching him, and
Mhm.
I can't lie, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I was like, all right, this guy's crazy. I kind of vibe with him, and every time the Benny Gesserit or Florence Pugh comes on screen, they're like, he's psychotic, he's crazy. He's psychotic. Like
Mhm.
that's the only line that they talk to him about. But the whole
Mhm.
scene, the framing, the build up, the fight, the cuts to the Uncle Baron, who is just like being like, yeah, kill him, like show me who you are. And then the score
Yeah.
for the Harkonnen was just like I think Hans Zimmer was just throwing everything. Talk to me
Mhm.
about what you thought of Gady Prime and feyd-rautha.
Yeah, nah, it was cool, man. Yeah, you're right. The Austin Butler, that boy can act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He bringing good word to the Butler name. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, you're right.
yeah, taught him well,
Jimmy
son.
Butler,
Right,
Austin Butler,
Austin Butler, yeah,
Robert.
Robert Butler, yeah. Come on, the
Y'all the
trilogy.
same family
Right,
tree.
right. No facts, just goats. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good, man. I mean, he was good. Again, I do wish he had more screen time. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
or more
The
things to
little
do.
he got, he was killing it though.
Yeah, little he got, he was killing it. And again, I understand the pacing of this movie. You know, I understand they wanted to make this as commercially viable as possible without making it as long. You know, super long. Like they didn't want a 3 hour movie. I'm guessing. You know what I mean? But I could
They
have
like
easily.
begged Denny, please, Denny, get anything under 3, just under 3. Yeah. And he was like, all right, but barely.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna give you 246.
Yeah.
And I do wish, man, I do wish I could have seen a 3 hour version of this movie for sure. But I think, I think with he was such a good performance. The like I mentioned before, the scene when he's getting seduced, was just so crazy and cool and trippy to me. You know, seeing
Hand in the box,
yeah, the hand in the
replaying
box
that again.
callback. Yeah,
That was
yeah,
cool.
yeah. But almost in the way of like, yo, he might be into it. You know what I mean?
No,
Like
they
he,
said it. I,
yeah.
I tweeted this out and I deleted it, but I'm gonna tweet it
Mm.
again. I don't care because I'm tweeting all these Dune memes. But I was like, when feyd-rautha puts his hand in the box and it's a picture of it's a GIF of Ric Flair, and he's like, "Whoa!" and his eyes are popping out, and he's like, "Yeah, whoa!"
Whoa.
and he's like having a blast. He's like riding a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But he was
Yeah.
awesome. I thought every scene he was in when the Baron passed the Gady Prime
Oh, that's what I
Baron.
meant to say. Yeah, and he kissed him
Yeah.
on the lips.
And he
Okay, for
kissed
one,
him,
he
yeah.
kissed him, and I heard that was improv. And then that scene is hilarious because if that is improv, you can totally tell it's improv now because he kisses him and looks directly in the camera and just like smirks at the camera. And both times I watched it, I'm like, did he just look at the camera? But it like so works. It just works with his
It kind
character.
of, yeah.
Like it's like the one time Denis. I know Denis Villeneuve was like cracking up behind that camera. Like he was laughing his butt off. Like, when that happened. But I think, yeah, this just so he's so good, man. He's just
Yeah,
again,
he's great.
he just ate it up. I think that's not to understand. That's not to undersell Dave Bautista's performance as well. He
Yeah,
was
well done.
also super good too. And a
And
Stellan
Stellan,
Skarsgård,
yeah, the Baron is, oh my God.
yeah.
I was so happy, and I know we're jumping around now, but I was so happy when he died, and I loved the death scene. I loved it. I don't know. That was like the one, anyone Harkonnen. Like the way I rooted during the sabotage missions. You
Mhm.
remember we haven't even talked about the first sabotage mission, but that
Oh
one
yeah,
was sick,
that
bro.
was
When
sick.
they
Yeah,
took down the spice miner,
yeah. And
and they
then
took on the helicopter.
yeah, and then because Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya had to like run behind the legs as they were like lifting. Like
Yeah,
yeah, that was intense. So he's like Villeneuve. He knows how to shoot action. Like he knows how
but
to shoot some action.
the way you're so on Team Fremen at that
Hmm.
point, right? Where you're
Hmm.
just like F all the
Oh
Harkonnens.
yeah.
And they keep showing it over and over again that by the time we get to the Baron, I was just like, I'm so ready for this dude to go. Um that I was just so happy when he died.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just wish he got another bar in there. Like give me a bar, give me like a something. Because I don't know. He just deserved a bigger bar, but I think he got one. He got like you die like an animal or something like that. But
Yeah, he said something. I do wish. Yeah, I thought he would have addressed the grandfather thing
he
when
did, but
yeah.
it was too quick. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what is funny though? Like, and I do apply Denis Villeneuve for like adapting the book and like not being afraid to make an adaptation because every time I try to read like the differences between the book and the actual movie, like it just gets weirder and weirder. Like apparently, like the the baby that was
The
inside
little
of
girl.
Jessica was actually a little girl, and she
Yeah.
kills the Baron at the
Yeah.
very end. And I'm like,
That
yo,
would have
that
been
would have been weird. Yeah,
that would have been dumb. Yeah. And
yeah.
apparently
Like
they do it in the original movie.
in the '80s movie,
Uh,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
saw a clip of it and I was like, all right, I get why he cut this.
yeah. No, literally,
I get why he changed it. This is kind of goofy.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it made a lot more sense for him to kill the Baron. But to me, all the Harkonnen really stood out. You know why RB3? I
Mm,
kept thinking about it, and I was like, 10,000 years in the future, or however long this takes place in,
mm.
we are 100% Gady Prime. I kept thinking about it. I was like, this is America.
Yeah.
Don't
Oh
catch you
yeah.
slipping now.
Yeah.
I was like, this is literally America. Gady Prime is America, bro. The
Yeah.
Harkonnen. We would have a black sun. We're all bald and we're killing each other for sport. The atmosphere is all dark and musty and dusty, and everyone has like the Baron can't even move. He has something on the
Right.
spine to
They
float.
gotta
Like
float.
I was like, bro, this
Yeah.
is America, bro.
Yeah.
This is literally Frank Herbert being like, yo, this is the US right here, bro.
Yeah.
Capitalist superpower who turns into nasty people.
Yeah.
Nasty people, bro. I
Yeah.
swear.
And I mean they literally go back to like gladiator fighting. I also love
Yeah.
the attention to detail of like how they use like basically like swords and knives like
Yeah.
very minimal
I love that.
yeah, like it's very hand to hand combat situations. I mean, they obviously have the guns and the big lasers and stuff. But yeah, it's the texture of the reality is so the texture of the world is so fully realized that everything just feels natural. Like it just feels like a raw desert, like kind of experience. Like every time they go into the firm again, and I seeing IMAX, like I kind of almost don't want to see it in any other format personally, you know, like because just seeing how full the frame will get, like when we see the planet and stuff like that, and like you mentioned, the scene when he's like mounting the worm for the first time, which apparently took 3 months to shoot that sequence. Them, you know, him getting on the worm and learning how to ride it. I thought it was phenomenal. Like I thought just he put such I think Villeneuve again, he's a lifelong fan of this property, so he knew like, all right, these are things I want. All this other stuff is a little bit out there and kind of loony, so let me just focus it in on just the bare essentials, and I think they did a really good job of that. So
What's let's finish up the cast. We have Zendaya as Chani. What'd you think of her?
she was really great too. She was really great too. I mean, of course, the last shot is just heartbreaking of her looking off, you know, into the sunset, waiting for that worm to come pick her up. Just heartbroken. She knelt that moment. You know, she was very. In some ways, in some scenes, of course, it was very much like she's just a prototypical like romantic interest,
Love interest, yeah.
love interest kind of thing. But it was cool seeing her in action, like when they recreated the shot from the first Dune. When Timothy Chalamet's in that dream sequence, just like molly whopping fools, like in the army, and it really turns around. It was like Chani, like in that sequence.
That was cool.
I thought that was dope. I thought Zendaya overall, yeah, she was amazing. I just do wish there was a little bit. She had a lot to do. I can't say she didn't have a lot to do. She had a lot to do. I just wish her story had a more fully realized conclusion to the end of it. But
I think they were waiting for the next part, is what they were implying with that last shot for sure.
yeah,
But yeah, the entire cast, obviously Javier Bardem, he worked as a kind of a comedic relief inside the movie, in a certain way, playing the role of the mentor, the coach, the Morpheus, I guess, inside this movie, as far as like picking the chosen one and then kind of riding the wave. But he also played up a really good role as well. It's interesting to see Gurney Halleck, Josh Brolin's character, kind of become a loyalist, right? Where he kind of just falls in line. I thought that was kind of interesting, where he's supposed to be the mentor, old master, kind of wise old Jedi figure, and he becomes like a loyalist. Like he's like, whatever you say, my lord, my duke. Yes, my duke. And I was like, wow, he's like he's lost in the sauce too. Like I thought that was really fascinating to see.
yeah. I kind of took that as he was more he was loyal to his father. He was loyal to Paul's father. Like
That's a
he
good
was
point. Yeah.
the loyalist to his father. And now that the father's gone, like he has to step up next in line to
Next in line,
do-
yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought that was fascinating. Let's jump to some of our favorite moments, RB3. Do you have a couple that you want to name? Favorite scenes?
Yeah, favorite scenes. I mean, there's a lot of favorite scenes that I have. I mean, the moment that I like laughed the most at was at the very, very end when Christopher Walken had to get on his knee and kiss Paul's
Kiss the
ring.
ring, yeah.
And then he like barely, he doesn't even kiss it. Like he barely skims it. Like he's
He goes,
like, yeah, right.
I don't think he makes contact.
Yeah, he doesn't even make contact. Exactly. I'm like, yo, he's so petty. Like that's the pettiest move of all time. I mentioned the well, you know, him climbing the worm and like riding it for the first time. The Sandwalk. Again, I always go to the Sandwalk. Like that's such
Sandwalk.
a sweet, like got the little romantic music playing.
Just the Harkonnen showing up in general. That's very it was very Sicario.
Oh, yeah.
The landscape, the
Yeah.
shadows, as far as the Harkonnen in all black with their giant guns, looking over the mountains. Those shots were really cool. So that opening scene was super cool as well. I like in that kiss the ring scene when he stomps. He does a little stomp. He's like, "Come on,
Yeah.
kiss that shit." I thought that was funny too. Everything with the Christopher Walken was pretty funny. I can't lie. Everything with Stilgar was funny too. The fact that he was like, you know, a lot of people memed it already, but the whole like he's too humble to say he's Messiah. He's like, he's too humble, bro. No Messiah would say he's the Messiah. That's why he's the GOAT. But I thought that was pretty funny as well. That those scenes were cool. I would say yes, right in the sandworm. There's a couple shots in there that I really do feel like were underrated. The shot of him going over to Dune, and he's like, you feel like you're riding the sandworm, and it's going super fast. That was cool because it felt like a roller coaster as far as like how that would feel to ride a sandworm. I thought that was a really cool concept as well. I already mentioned the Harkonnen battle scene when he fights the guy in the arena. I thought that was cool.
The last sword fight with Faye as well.
Yeah, the knife fight.
Cool.
Yeah,
knife fight. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I like the little details in there where feyd-rautha repeats his line to him, the "May thy knife chip and shatter," and when he does it, he's like, "May thy knife chip and shatter," and then feyd-rautha's like, "Oh yeah, may thy knife chip and shatter, bro."
Yeah. Well, also,
and the way he said it, he was like, "Thy knife."
Right. Well, that's, you know, because that's funny. You say you never saw Elvis, and I could definitely, you never saw it, and then, but you could hear. I don't know if you could hear it, but I heard a little Elvis voice, like,
really
popping out every now and then.
I never saw it. So.
That was one of those moments. The very first line that he does, he says something like, "Yeah, are you hungry, my darlings?" But he says "my darlings." I'm like, oh, that's Elvis. Like, you can't slip that past me. The way he said "darlings" right there, like that's Elvis Presley. But he melted into the rest of it. But
can we talk about everyone thirsting over Harkonnens and shit? Like,
well, it's only Austin Butler. There.
It's only us, but still, like they're supposed to be off-putting.
Yeah.
And we still got people thirsting over them.
Yeah.
Like, all right, right now, bro. Harkonnen wife or no, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm doing a TikTok.
Nah. I'm chilling.
Harkonnen wife or daughter.
Yo. Oh no.
I'm just playing with you.
But that's funny.
But anyways, he killed that scene. That knife fight was cool. You know what I loved about it? And I know everyone said this already, but watching the movie, the no score. The fact that the score goes out, like the last score you hear is right before they charge for the knives. He's like, "All right, you ready?" And then the score goes, and then they just start grunting. I thought that was cool. No score for knife fights. That's a really cool concept as well. That's cool detail.
Yeah, no, that was great. I thought that was a really great scene. Gurney's like introduction. Like I feel like that was the first time we were seeing Timothée Chalamet like really get full like Furman soldier mode. Like he popped up out of the sand. Like, yeah, exactly. Full Muad'Dib. He pops up out of the sand and just like gets some. It's like, I heard your footsteps.
Also, when he went after, sorry, I forgot. Also, when I went after Rabban Batista.
Oh,
and you see the bomb go off, and he's like, Muad'Dib. And then he shows up and he's just walking slow. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit. And then all the other Fremen start coming up and Batista starts running away.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, this is a whole different level now, bro.
Right. So I was going to ask. So was Batista the only Harkonnen that survived that movie, or Dune
He didn't
2?
survive. He got stabbed in the throat.
Was that? But Gurney, was that Gurney who stabbed him, or
Yeah.
okay. So no Harkonnen like really like made it to the end. So okay. I mean, at least the
I
main
don't
ones
think
that we
so. No, I
finished.
think they
Yeah.
wiped him out. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they
All right.
killed him.
Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. That's brutal, man. That's brutal.
Hey, man, they did it to us, bro.
Yeah.
I'm just playing.
They took all the Atreides. I also thought there was Timothy. One more thing about the Paul's journey and Timothy Chalamet's journey. The one thing that I'm still a little confused, not confused, but I would love for the audience and the commenters to tell us what they think. Was he manipulating Chani the whole time, or did he like generally have love for her from the beginning and then switched up, after he drank the water of life? Because I can see it both ways. Like I can see him just trying to manipulate and ingratiate himself into the community, get the little swirl on, things like that. But they didn't. And they fell for it for a second.
No.
But
Not the swirl.
I mean, exactly. They fell for it, and he ended up getting in. But that's the one thing, because
The pasta lobster.
yeah.
Oh no.
Nah, so I don't know,
He'd be
man.
feeding me pasta lobster on Caladan, House of Atreides, bro. That's too much. I'm sorry.
Oh man.
Yeah, I could see it both ways, but I think he was sincere. But then again, you don't know, right? You don't know. Maybe there is no sincerity in his journey. Maybe there's only the mission, right? Where if you can see the future, then this is kind of what you have to do. You have to, I don't know, make this girl fall in love with you, or maybe just kind of at least learn from this girl, right? I guess that's my thought process behind it. Another moment I want to shout out to is obviously the moment when he walks. I like the moment after he drinks the water of life and he walks up to the southern siege after he gets off the worm. And then the score starts coming in. And I reheard that score, and a lot of people have talked about how that score is a lot darker than anything we've heard from Paul before. Heavy guitars, heavy synth. And it feels like he's just transformed into someone else. And then we see that what he says, his speech, that scene was definitely something that at first I wasn't buying into it, if I'm being real. But then rewatching it again, I really enjoyed that last part when he was talking about, I'm the Duke of Arrakis and Lisan al-Gaib is me. Essentially, I love it the first time when I saw it, when he's like, no one here could stand against me. And everyone gets up and pulls out their knives. Say that again.
And like, weren't y'all just worshiping this dude like 2 seconds ago?
No, but before when he was like, no one here could stand against me, that was the trigger that set him off. They're like, what do you mean?
They're ready to fight. And
they're
then
ready to fight, all 10,000 of them.
right. Yeah, and he started like reading minds. So the power. The water of life actually does give him access to like all the time in history and stuff. So that's how he's able to, talk. I guess that combined with his Bene Gesserit like training or whatever, allows for that. I love the scene when at the very end when he just tells the old Reverend Mother like silence, and then like his with that voice. I'm like, oh man, yeah, this dude's fully turned over. And then lastly, it's very interesting because I do feel like Stilgar, he did rock with Paul Atreides and he was rocking with him, but I know secretly when they were like, I feel like secretly when Atreides was like, oh yeah, let's go fight for the Holy War. Like when he was like basically saying like, let's go fight. I think they kind of had this reaction on Javier Bardem, like, oh, he kind of didn't want that to happen. Like he didn't want to go to war. Like he did believe in the Liza Beam or all that stuff, but he just didn't want to go the extra step of like, oh, let's go to a holy war for all 5 houses kind of situation. But he ends up going for it. They end up going for it as fighters because they want to defend Arrakis and also because they believe in the myth. But yeah, it's very interesting. I really do feel like the people who he swayed this time around in this movie, like they're not gonna be, they're gonna start seeing the deception as ways, especially after he's been hanging out with Chani like the whole movie, and then just boom, switches up, proposes to Florence Pugh like that at the very end, you know. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they did expect him to win right there. I think
yeah.
that they thought it was over, where they felt like all he has to do is kill the emperor and it's
Mm,
over, or kill the emperor's soldier, right, or the emperor's chosen fighter,
right.
um, which was feyd-rautha. Once he was dead, it was over. But you're right, they had to keep going and keep fighting
Mm,
uh, into aerial combat, which I was like, I kind of want to see aerial combat in this movie. I don't think we've seen a lot of it.
mm.
Um, I think that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, the entire movie has a lot of moments and scenes. It's kind of hard to pinpoint the ones that really stand out. Any favorite shots in the movie? Just to give you a final chance to throw some love to Greg Fraser.
Man, I mean, I thought a lot of the night photography. I actually don't really love movies that are too dark or have too much night photography because I'm blind. I need light. But he does a really brilliant job of like making the night scenes in the desert not feel like too dark or anything. Like they're very natural and feel nice. And that again, that the I think even just the shots, the movie speaks so brilliantly, with the language, the visual language. So I just like all of the shots like really hit. But the one shot I do love is like, yeah, seeing the Harkonnen like just float up to that giant rock in the beginning. I love seeing all of the wide shots of the desert, like whenever they're doing it. I love that montage that they're having when Chani and Paul are kind of like falling in love a little bit, like falling in love / fighting together in war. Like he's kind of like his like soldier montage and stuff like that. I love any time that they actually had the like the amplifier goggles on and like zoomed in, and it almost felt like very like sniper, like American Sniper in certain times. Yeah, I loved all the war stuff. I love the romance stuff was a little bit, whatever, but I love the way it was shot. The dialogue, I think it's a little funny that Denis Villeneuve, before the movie came out, was like, oh yeah, dialogue and TV is like destroying movies. And then you watch the dialogue in this movie, is like, oh, I can kind of see, like, he wasn't really vibing with this dialogue either. Or at least, I don't know, maybe he was, but I don't know. I feel like there's on two scenes that it was just bordering close to like, I hate sand, like kind of vibe. Like it was very close to hitting that line. It wasn't there, but it was close. So the dialogue wasn't the strongest suit in some points, but the shots and the cinematography elevated it. Like I said, the production design, the costumes, like all of it all around was just at next level phenomenal. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it really is a testament to shooting on location, production design, care in detail, and care in making things look real.
Mm-hmm.
And they got that in the first movie, and I really feel like they amplified it inside of this one as well, where they do a lot of care inside of these shots and inside of these story beats when it comes to jumping from planet to planet, jumping to the Fremen, obviously to the castle, to the Harkonnen, all this kind of stuff really felt like they were putting in a lot of effort in every single department into creating this sci-fi, otherworldly environment, which I thought was really cool. Some shots I want to shout out. There's a lot of obvious ones that I really like. You mentioned the wide shot of the two of them on top of the sand dune in the desert when they're
Mm-hmm.
kissing. It's a good shot. I can't even deny it.
Yeah.
I like the shot when it's just Paul on the sand dune by himself calling the worm,
Oh
and it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
super wide and it's just a
yeah.
little person in the middle.
Oh, dude, and then in the IMAX 70 millimeter, the rest of the scene was kind of normal, but that one shot was full, and it
Yeah.
was like, whoa, like that was great,
And it's all sand. It's just a little dude in the middle. I was
Yeah,
like, that's a cool shot. That's a
yeah.
really cool. Also, the millions of people shot when they're all parting the seas and it's just him walking through the sea of people.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
shot, like the first time you
That was
saw that
great too.
shot, you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah, all right, he's spitting
Yeah,
right now.
he's the master at this. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's on Scorsese level with shots like those for sure, for sure.
yeah, and then there's the shot when he is the back of him and it's the bombs going off, and the shot the back of him and it's the army in the foreground as
Uh-huh.
well. I thought that was really cool.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, one more shot I want to shout out again.
yeah,
When they're in the when they're again when they're taking Jonas and he's getting like his water pumped out of him, and they're like by the giant lake that is like all the souls of Fremens and stuff. That scene when it first gets introduced, like it's a little hard to tell if it's water at the very first, so it kind of looks like a reflection of like the top of the set with the bottom of the set. And again, in full frame, like it just looks like a fully decked out, like beautiful thing, and it was gorgeous. And again, it's very cool that the production design and the costumes very heavily leaned into like this biblical, like Jerusalem kind of looking aesthetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and those are definitely scenes that look that really highlighted that. So, and I love that Villeneuve didn't just use the IMAX 70mm format just for the action scenes. Like he utilized it during the scene of Giannis and them in that, all the way up until Jessica takes the water of life and stuff like that. Uses it in close-ups. Like I love the close-ups in this movie, man. That's why I'm kind of having a hard time. Like, what are some of the individual shots? But just like every time I just think of the close-ups, like they just are so well framed, close, but like because it's IMAX, it's like huge but like cinematic, and I don't know. Gorgeous all the way around, man. Gorgeous all the way around.
Yeah, it's a lot to give a shout out to because there's so much there that really stood out. So props to the filmmakers. Go ahead.
I do have one more question for you though. This year, Warner Brothers, I believe Warner Brothers and Legendary has 2 Anya Taylor-Joy starring desert movies that are both going to be critical darlings, like award seasons. You know what I mean? I'm talking about Dune 2 and I'm talking about Furiosa. Right, like
oh yeah,
I don't know if they showed the trailer for Furiosa before.
They did, yeah.
For yours, and I'm hearing the word on the street is that Furiosa is like on the same tier as Mad Max Fury Road. You know what I mean? Like I hear it's testing extraordinarily well. My question is, where did the technical awards for the Oscars go next year? You know what I mean? Is it going to be a duke off between Dune 2 and Furiosa? Like, are they gonna have to prioritize one movie or the other?
I think they're gonna have to, yeah.
Yeah, because they're just two. They're both gonna be there, and they did have Mickey 17 that was gonna come out with Robert Pattinson, directed by Bong Joon-ho, but they pushed that to 2025. But I definitely feel like that was like, all right, we have 2 big sci-fi movies coming out. We can't have a third one. We can't have the Bong Joon-ho movie. Like, let's push that out to next year or something. But we gotta see, man. I gotta see. I want to see Furiosa, and I want to see how it plays. It's gonna be a vast opposite of like Dune is very quiet, meticulous, like steady-handed shot by Villeneuve, like kind of thing. Whereas Furiosa is gonna be wild, impactful, lots of zoom shots, lots of like craziness. I'm hyped, man. I'm hyped. This is looking up to be a good year in cinema so far.
Yeah, I really am hype as well. I can't wait for it. Mad Max is awesome, and I really do feel like those kind of movies are really fun to see in a big screen. So shout out to that for sure. And shout out to this movie. I really enjoyed it. Again, I think we both really did as well. Hopefully we get a Dune Messiah. I really do feel like there's a lot of story to tell, and I feel like a lot of people are keen and interested in hearing this story. So I'm excited to see what we get next. Any final thoughts, RB3?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be, or I definitely think we're going to see a Dune Messiah. I think this movie's going to have, I don't think it's going to make Oppenheimer money, but I think it's going to get like at least like a cool 700 million worldwide for sure. Sure. I think that's where it's going to end up landing, 750 or something like that, 750 milli. And then I think like with that, I think they should greenlight a Dune Messiah. I mean, I would hope they do.
You never know though with Zaslav, but I think they will. I think they will.
Yeah.
Just out of respect to the actors and to Denny.
Yeah, because Denis Villeneuve been out there promoting the heck out this movie. I've seen like a bajillion interviews with this dude popping up.
I think they're gonna have to do it just because of him, and that's why I think. To answer your first question, I think they would prioritize this one. Just to make Denny happy.
Yeah,
because you never know. He can put a Chris Nolan and be like, "Yo, peace."
Yeah,
I'm never coming back to the studio.
Yeah, and if he did that, like he is the new generation's Nolan. Like he is for sure. Like in terms of the blockbuster,
he could dip and be like, "I'm taking this elsewhere." I mean, I don't know if he could do that, but he could probably threaten to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, I hope Dune Messiah. I guess he's gonna do. Didn't even talk about another interview. He's gonna do another movie in between
Yeah.
now in Dune Messiah. I think that is a good move. I think having a little bit of a break in between. Time, exactly. Like, you don't want to rush these movies out. I think it's beneficial to like let the creative process just space out. And same thing that Christopher Nolan did with Dark Knight Rises. I mean, maybe that's not the best example, right? Like, we saw Dark Knight Rises came out, but at least we got Inception. Like, so maybe Villeneuve will service up like the next like Inception like kind of situation before Dune Messiah. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyways, guys, those were our thoughts on Dune 2. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments down below. You can follow me at Squad Leader Ace, RB3.
And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3.
And then obviously, guys, follow us right here at First Cut. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. But for the First Cut crew, we're going to be peacing out. So deuces, deuce.